Welcome to part three of our strategic attendance plan and playbook series. My name is Sharon Bradley. I'll be your facilitator. I come to you with 25 years of public ed experience, special education teacher, dropout prevention coordinator, principal, director of student services. I am so proud to be a part of the Raw We attendance improvement team as principal consultant. And we talk all things chronic absenteeism, real conversations, real strategies and systems in order to help you do the important work. So, just briefly about Raw We Attendance Improvement, we are the premier attendance improvement management platform that is proven. I mean, we have been proven to help district partners reduce chronic absenteeism, recoup funding. We know that is important right now, and regain those important instructional minutes. So, our playbook series, for those of you who are new, this is all about addressing chronic absenteeism to say, hey, this is something we want to do. This is something great to do. We know in order to move the needle, you need more than just good intentions. So we're going to look and see how can we build those systems? How can we create that alignment? How can we create some shared ownership to get you guys off the island in order to do the work? You may say, oh, I'm here. Is this really for me? Yes, it is. If you are a district administrator, if you are a campus leader, if you are a part of PBIS team, attendance team, student service, I have some parent educators on the line. If you make any decisions that are student centered, if you interact with students, families, if you build capacity in adults in order to take care of the kids, this is for you because we want to move from awareness, we want to move from theory, and we want to put these things into action to have measurable results. We know when we have measurable results, kids and students are re-engaged and students are coming to school on a regular basis. All right. So our learning targets, you guys know how we do it. It seems like we have some people who keep coming. We have 6 sessions. This is the 3rd session, and we're going to develop district-specific or school-specific playbooks for attendance so we can prepare for next year. Sometimes we don't have the time to really think through some things. So we're going to think through some things today in order to be able to do what is best. We are aligned with Attendance Works. I know they have the national goal to cut chronic absenteeism in half. And please scan the QR code. Prioritizing routes. And our description, you're going to leave knowing how to set some realistic, data-driven attendance goals at the district, campus, and student group levels. Okay, it depends on what's your focus, what you want to prioritize. You guys would gain practical strategy for tiered interventions to address barriers before students become chronically absent. So we're going to do a lot of preventative things because you're getting ready for next school year. So whether you start in July, whether you start August, what are those things we can do day one to prevent so many students from being chronically absent? You know, that's not just going to be with strategy. We have to look at our systems. So if I'm asking you to, set priorities and things like that, let me get to my prioritizing routes. You remember I told you, we looked in our district plans, we looked in our strategic plan, PBIS plans. There are other priorities. And I want you to make sure that you write it out. What are those other competing priorities? You in your district, you know where the money goes. You know what is rising to the top right now. How do you connect with that? Remember, Anna ISD, one of their main priorities was safety. They connected attendance with safety. The goal was safety. The objectives was attendance. So write it down so you can know what you're dealing with, what you're up against, so you can push the work. The next one is making the case. If you're connecting it to literacy, if you're connecting it to graduation rates, you have to make the case. So how does attendance help you have the conversations with top leadership so you can get the help. Well, one thing you can do is say it's the law. Senate Bill 991 says that now we have to define, we have to track, we have to report chronic absenteeism in our district. Now, you guys have, we've always had to do this for truancy. And this is that time of the year where you're trying to get all your information and report. I know here in the state of Texas, we're trying to report, by June and things like that. Well, we have to do the same for chronic absenteeism. How are you doing this? Is there a way to make this easier for you? I'm always going to put in the plug that, while we attendance improvement platform makes this so easy in just a few clicks. But I do want to let you know that we are lobbying this in Texas and to get this funded. The unfunded bills do not help. But if you're having a conversation with your superintendent, your deputy superintendent, your executive director, Senate Bill 991, this is something we have to do. So let's prioritize this. So once you're able to get people on board, whether it is leadership or is you're reaching across the aisle or the next department, get off the island in order to make this work happen. Because at the end of the day, guys, we want you to be system dependent and not person dependent. There are so many people that come into the district and they work decades and they got all the goods. They know all the information, they know the systems, they know all the things. But when they leave or when they retire, then where will you be? So let's write it down. Let's think through it. Let's get a system in place. So, you know how I feel. Let's talk about it. So go to your guide. We are going to shift. Let's go a little bit. Let me go to my guide in order to help you. All right. So we're prioritizing the routes, but I want you to start here. This is an example of how the team may prioritize. If I'm telling you to prioritize, you got to figure out, okay, what are we prioritizing? Let's start from the jump. Your attendance policy. I got to ask you, do you know where your attendance policy is? Do you, or is it just a legacy practice? Can anyone in the chat kind of define what a legacy practice is? Now, with the attendance policies, you can find in the student, typically you can find in the student handbook, you can find it in the school board policies, you can find it in a variety of ways. Here we go. Let's go over. It's something we've always done. Yeah, exactly. And these legacy practices, like for instance, 3 tardies equal an absence. I was following that for years and come to find out it wasn't written anywhere. And so with that being said, some people say, hey, we recently removed disciplinary penalties for truancy and replaced them with supportive interventions. You've added more incentives, not just for students, but to parents, even staff members, to motivate strong attendance. But then also we still need to ask parents what kind of resources they need. So let's talk about it a little bit. Number one, I'm going to ask you, is your attendance policy outdated? Most people say yes. They don't even know where it is. Let me give you an example. You must have a doctor's note if you're sick in order to have an excused absence. People, what if they don't have a doctor? What if they don't have access to health care? So the student is sick or a student is out, but because they cannot give a doctor's note, is unexcused. So they get penalized twice. We can't get appropriate health care, and then we also can't get an excuse when it's evident that we're sick. And then another question I want to ask you, how and when is your attendance policy being taught to students and parents and staff? I want you to ask yourself that question, because A lot of times it's not shared or it's in the handbook, but just like it's in the book. And remember, the reason why we're doing this because we don't want this book to just be on a shelf or to be on site. A lot of parents are the same way. Another thing, attendance policy. If a kid has been absent for several days, this is a real thing. There's a school district that provides zero suspension, 0 day suspension, where until you can bring your parent to school with you, you are suspended. So if you can bring your parent to school with you the next day, then it's only 0 day suspension. But if your mom is working 2 or 3 jobs and can't get to school, then the kid is out. So those are the things that I would like for you to reflect on. And then wellness centers. I'm interested to know, do you guys have wellness centers, not just a school nurse, but a wellness center in your district or on your campus that students and families can go to? If so, I think that it is amazing thing because the school is in the community, people feel comfortable and they can get the support they need. Yes, I know that takes funding and lots of funding to make it happen, but there are people that are making it happen. If you're unable to make that happen, plan or collaborate with your local hospital. This says plan to deploy mental health care for mobile vans in rural regions. We have an hospital here, is Texas Health Resources, and they have several mobile units that are willing to go into different areas. It could be within your school community. If you advertise, they can get screenings, they can get help, they can get all the support that they need. Same thing with mental health care. See if there are some mental health providers that come to the location, whether it's a location of centralized location of your choice or in the neighborhoods. So the reason why I say this is important, I'm going to give you a statistic. 1 in 10 of students have asthma or have asthmatic symptoms. 1 in 10. I was like, what? And this is from the American Lung Association. The reason why I also say that is because the number one health reason why students don't come to school, cause for absenteeism, is asthma. Asthma is the leading illness that causes absenteeism. So the reason why we need to, number one, how do we collaborate with our school nurses or our district health providers in order to get information out there in multiple language, to do different assessments? There are some kids, they don't come to school because they don't know what's going on. They come to school because they can't see. So once they are able to get vision tests and able to get glasses, you have, I think it's the Lions Club. They offer free glasses. So if you have a Lions Club or association in your area, they provide free glasses to kids. All right. Oh, Gina, they said we have wellness clinics for students. Oh, okay, Gina. And this is in Memphis. Kudos to you guys for that. I love that. But I really hope that more and more districts and people do that. Okay, we talked about working with the local hospitals and clinics and school nurse. How about creating a list of doctors and dentists that can provide free and low cost services? There are some that are out there or sliding scale, but maybe even create even another list. Most doctors and dentists, they're open what, from 8 to 5? Guess what? We in school usually around that time from 8 to 5. So working with them to see, hey, would you be willing to provide one weekend of being open, one weekend a month or one evening a week? And let us know so we can let our parents know that, okay, on Tuesday evenings, this dentist is available or this doctor is available, or on the weekend, this particular healthcare provider is available to provide more flexible hours. And then I promise you, I'm gonna get off the health wellness tip. You remember when we were all quarantined and we had the pandemic, and if a kid coughed or if they sneezed, we were like, you need to go home. We never really turned that ship around. So we still have lots of kids. If they cough once, the parent is like, you know, you can't go to school. So is there communication out there in your district? How much is too sick to come to school? And if you don't have it, let's begin to have those conversations. All right, restorative practices. If you have a restorative practices in your district, I'd love to put it in the chat to see how that is working. We know that restorative practices, we started our session with restorative practices. A lot of people believe that restorative practices is just conflict resolution. 80% is community building. How do we build community? How do we increase that school connectedness where kids are connected to their teachers or to adults, or they're connected to their peers? Okay, so they can want to come to school each day. And if something happens, we have a tool, we have a platform to repair the relationship. Because, guys, we can't restore or repair a relationship that wasn't built in the first place. So a lot of people say we tried that restorative practices thing, it didn't work. So again, we talked about in our previous sessions, throwing a question out there once a day or once a week, whatever that sweet spot is, so we can get to know one another. So we can, that can also be an engaging activity. I've had schools that had school-wide morning meetings, like a school-wide community building session, where because they were noticing that several kids were being targeted. This is on the elementary campus. So what they did, they said, we're going to have morning meetings campus wide every day. There was a new surprise. There was a teacher doing something that was really cool. They did an activity. And guess what? Those kids were putting pressure on their parents to say, come on, I don't want to miss the meeting. The whole school is going to be there. So do not underestimate the power of restorative practice to help with your attendance. And let me check the chat real quick. I saw some clicking going up. Okay, DeSoto, using that. And Pearland at the Pace Center. Good, good. I hope that gives you some ideas as to how you can possibly use it. And not just what is your favorite superpower or anything like that. You can also utilize this for school expectations, because what's PBIS? What are those expectations? Increasing student engagement. But also, guys, what I think is powerful about this is increasing positive student teacher relationships. All right. Everybody don't necessarily have a STEAM program, so I don't want anyone to feel like that's not for them. Let's go on to hybrid schedule. I know everyone is not here from Texas, but we now from TEA can receive a waiver or permission if we apply to create an optional flex school day program. All right. There are kids who are experiencing extenuating circumstances. Yes, in a perfect world, we want our kids to come to school Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 3:30 every day. But when you have older kids who stand at home with the younger kids, if you have high school kids who are not working to just pay for gas and a new car or anything like that, they are literally working to contribute to the household. They need a different schedule. I know most, and I used to be the principal of the alternative school, so I had a program like that on my campus. But I'm challenging districts to have programs like that, or of flexible hybrid schedules on regular campuses in the district or in the charter network. What about virtual academies? What does that look like? Or learning labs on a campus? What can that look like? Micro schools. I'm beginning to see more and more micro schools popping up. And it's just, yeah, just lots of things that are happening. The anti-bullying curriculum. You're like, okay, how in the world can this help with our work? This one is saying the curriculum was purchased 2 years ago and hadn't been fully implemented. Do you have something like that? Do you have anti-bullying training for students or staff, so when they see it, They can feel empowered to be an upstander and not a bystander. Research shows that when bullying, if someone sees bullying and they intervene, bullying is cut by half. Okay. We need to assess whether bullying is even a key factor as to why kids are coming to school. I will tell you, yes, it is why some kids are avoiding school. How do you get this information? How do you get that qualitative data? Do you have student focus groups? Going back to NISD, you see the school safety and helping students stay connected and with those important goals. And then the last one is the portrait of a graduate. Several districts and charter networks has what do we want that graduate to be. They're also collaborating and aligning this with the CCMR, college career military readiness goals. When kids graduate from our school, what skills do we want them to have? Do we want them to be responsible decision makers? Do we want them to be able to go to work every day on time? Or if they're not physically going to work, how do we create students where they can be engaged? But the same skills and attendance pattern that we are asking for now is what's needed in the workplace. So, with that being said, in the chat, does anyone have anything they would like to discuss? All right, let's keep it moving. Now, this is something that one of those things that the prioritization rubric that I would like for you to do on your own. There's something because there are some guiding questions that you will really need to think through. But bottom line, this activity helps teams examine those attendance initiatives. Okay, what initiatives you have in place, and what can we do to bring those back to life if they have lost a little life, or the initiatives that you're thinking about, but how can we refine them in a way that can help us move the needle to increase the level of support, to increase the level of urgency, because you know that this, you're ringing the alarm, but the people that have the purse strings, how can we outweigh the costs and benefits of getting this work done and doing it now while meeting those legal requirements? All right. And those initiatives, you can put those initiatives there that you have or that you would like to propose. But let's go here. Proactive and reactive efforts. With this attendance work, when we want to be proactive, that is what we want. And it says to truancy prevention. We don't like to use the T word a lot around here. So to chronic absenteeism. Because again, for those of you who are joining us, truancy, I feel like that is after the fact. That is just looking at kids who have unexcused absences only. But chronic absenteeism is looking at all absences, because what if a kid is hospitalized for several days? Even though it's excused, he has still missed a lot of instruction. And no matter why a kid is missing school, he's missing, and it could have detrimental effects. So we want to shift. We want to be proactive. We want to be supportive. We want to have engagement. We want things to be timely, because with these proactive strategies, if we are timely, then we can, it'll be fewer kids going into tier 2 and tier 3 interventions. And then, of course, with being reactive, this is being punitive. But we want to be more of problem solvers. If I don't know where I'm asleep tonight, you can give me, my parents are fine, but I can't pay it. The whole goal of being responsive, I would rather use the term responsive rather than reactive, is to change behavior. Attendance is behavior. And when a kid is absent, what are they telling us? If the kid is absent, what is absent in their lives? So let's keep it moving. If you go on to the next page, all right. So for each criterion, rate your extent that your district employs the following proactive, or I want you to scratch that, instead of reactive, responsive techniques. It says we look at historical student attendance data to inform and develop strategies for truancy prevention. Okay. I would like for everyone, most people, they go back to the pandemic, that 2020, 1920, oh, sorry, 2019, 2020, just to have some comparison. I would like, if you hadn't, yes, you can go back to last year. You may even go back 3 years. But what does that look like? Who are the students that, no matter what has gone on in the world, this student group, as they have severe truancy issues? Is it your migrant population? Is it your homeless population? Is it your pre-K, kindergarten? What is it? Because guess what? If it's been happening for the last 3 years, if it was happening the last 2 years, how can we be proactive to plan so that this doesn't happen next year? Okay, look at the students who are returning next year and coming up with a plan. All right, and then you can rate yourself low, medium, high. The next one, we send out informational materials frequently to all students on the merits and lifelong benefits of good attendance to broaden awareness. Most districts just send it to the kids who have attendance issues. Most districts have parent attendance informational forums, and it's by invitation once we notice that a kid is missing. How can we open this up to everybody? You have kids and students that are coming from different districts, different states, even different countries, and they don't know. I challenge you to open this up to everyone, and not just, of course, in various languages. Rawi has over 114 languages, but then also, is this in, check this out, I know my kids used to get this, a teacher email or letter before the year even started. Hi, I'm Miss Jones. I'm going to be your English teacher. Looking forward to having you, whatever. In that correspondence, can we put some attendance information? It's important to come to school every day. School starts at this particular time, things like that. We employ early outreach to families before tardies and absences escalate. So before we even get into what are the absences, how to prevent absences, what can we do to prevent tardies? What can you do what are some ways you can tackle tardies on your campus? Can someone put some things in the chat? What are you doing? Because if we're being proactive, because kids just don't just become absent. Some do, but some, they begin to sleep in class, disengage. They begin to say they have to go to the nurse 11 times or to the restroom. They begin to escape. Then they begin to be tardy, whether it's to school or to class. So what are your ways to tackle tardies? You know how I operate. I'm not the expert. We are the experts here, and we are the ones that's going to help one another. Says, beat the bell. Oh, okay. Tamikia, tell me more about beat the bell. What is that? It seems like it seems like a reverse psychology for kids. If they can beat the bell, because sometimes kids want to compete with themselves. I would love to hear more about that. Instead of tardy slips, create welcome slips to I love that so much. They create welcome slips to welcome, so the kids can feel welcome when they arrive. And this would be so great, especially for elementary kids, because they show up late. They are at the beck and call of their parents. So they get the pink slip and the nasty looks, and it wasn't even about them. Okay, let's see. I said tardy incentive for students who are time certain students receive prizes can be announced on the morning show. Okay, I like that. So it's random. Hey, if you do your part, you got a chance to win prizes. I like that. I've had several kids to say we never get or pick up a basketball game or anything like that. So I've had some districts before school start, they just have a pickup soccer game. Anybody can join, they can move around until school starts. They started it on Mondays because Mondays had the worst tardies and the worst absenteeism, and it really made a difference. So just saying, and they used the education foundation to buy two goals, like two soccer goals, and they just get out there and just go with it. Okay, what else we have? Okay, do we do the welcome slips? They love the switch, and yeah, it puts them in a solid mood. Awesome, thank you. You can do movie clubs if you guys have different clubs. Instead of clubs being at the end of the day, you can do them before school or both, just so that kids can feel engaged. All right, it says we communicate quickly, promptly to caregivers to offer timely and appropriate interventions. If you, as a parent, want me to help or be engaged, I got to know what's going on. And I know we say we send information out at the third absence or the fifth absence or seventh absence. The first day they're out, what can we share? What can we do to just we just noticed that he was out today, and to do that promptly. And automation is key. How can we automate that to make life better? We provide simple explanations, expectations, and appropriate consequences for absentee behavior. This is, remember, I told you, working with your PBIS team. Several of you have PBIS. What are those clear expectations and the explanations? What can we do? How can we be, like you say, more welcoming? How can we monitor? How can we communicate? And then next, the reactive criteria. And let me back this up a little bit. I'm gonna go over this and then I'm gonna show some things on my slides again. It says the best thing to prevention is intervention, crafting plans to address what every struggling kid needs in the world of AI. I went to a conference yesterday and people are showing how they're utilizing AI to pretty much create an individualized plan for every kid based on their needs with little time and effort. This is not AI, but let me go back to my slides. I want to show you just a simple attendance improvement plan. When we're noticing that kids are missing and there are things that they need, there we go. In your attendance improvement plan, you may have a template already, but I just put it in the chat and for you to utilize. Um, Before we even get into what's going on, what is the goal for the particular child? And let's look at it. Is the kid tardy? Is he missing parts of days? Is he missing all the days? Is he coming to school every day but just not going to class? What are those previous interventions that did not work? Sometimes we just do things just for the sake of doing it. But before we get into the nitty gritty, let's kind of talk about what are some positives. What are some of the students' strengths? The parent is there. What motivates the child? What are some of the family strengths? Every family has something to contribute in some shape, form, or fashion. Sometimes allowing the kids to be the family to be able to talk through their routine. What do their afternoon routine look like? Is the kid coming home taking a nap every day? What does the bedtime routine look like? Are the kids going to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning? What does that morning routine look like? And then thinking through, and they can talk through it or whatever, but who is that responsible family member for getting the kid out of the door? And then, hey, what is the plan B of transportation? Just having a conversation, and as I said in my very first slide, write it down. Think through it, write it down. And then now let's get to the root causes as to why the kid is absent. Because if a person, I don't know about you, if I'm able to talk about some of my contributions, some of my strengths, it's going to be a little bit easier for me to talk about where I'm falling short. And then with the commitments, it's not just the commitments of the school. What are going to be some of the commitments for the school, for the student, for the family, and community people? So I just want to be able to share that with you guys. That could honestly help you as you go through there. Let's see. And then, of course, I always like to show this. This is just the document that shows Title I schools. Um, if you have funds that are left over, you can utilize that in order to help you with this work. Title IV, I use Title IV money to help with attendance work. Several of you are recipients of the Stronger Connections grants. You can utilize that. There were some people from Memphis. Memphis have some community schools. They are also recipients of the Promise Neighborhood Schools. Look into that funding to help you because remember, we can have all the intentions in the world, but if we are not willing to do the work, but in order to be able to do the work with fidelity, we need tools and resources. Another um, here's a questionnaire. Several of you have asked before when you are talking with kids, and part of that proactive work, yeah, we're beginning to see that the kid is beginning to miss a little bit, but we got to get to the heart of it. FYI, if you do not have a relationship with the kid, I don't think you should utilize this. But if you have a relationship with the student, that is the person who should ask these very, very simple questions. They have been adapted. There is a book that I love by the Spriggs, the School Leader's Guide to Increasing School Attendance. That is here. So sometimes, have you noticed that some of your kids don't come to school when the weather's bad? And it's because they walk to school. You know, some kids began to stop going to school or a certain class period. It's probably because they don't know what's going on in the class. Many, I say, getting kids connected. They may not be band kids or whatever, but that is a big proactive strategy. Getting kids connected to something and finding out what they like. They may not have clean clothes. They may not have permanent housing. So, and test day, they may just have test anxiety. Are they not coming to school on test day? So, I want to make sure that you have that. You remember I was sharing that many kids who have chronic illnesses, those are the ones. And I want you to, if you can pull the number of kids who may have a 504 plan and a health plan, look at their attendance. Many schools are noticing, like, wow, because the absences were excused, we didn't realize this kid had over 40 absences or 50 absences. So this is just a sample slide. Oh, let me get back into my slideshow so you guys can see it. Just so you can kind of just think of different ways, or as you begin to brainstorm different plans in order to help students, I want you to just know that this is an example. All right, so as we go back, it says we are able to separate the students' behaviors from their character and address attendance issues. This is when a lot of the implicit bias kind of come into effect. We begin to label rather than just describe what we're seeing. If describing does not mean label, and let me break this down a little bit. We can say that Johnny has missed, 35 days of school, but we can't say Johnny don't care about school, and if not this long, then I'm just going to focus on the kids who are here. We have to be able to separate and keep, when we say all means all, so what can we do to figure out, number one, why he's been out? And we don't care what his behavior is, because hey, sometimes kids who have exhibit misbehaviors, educators are like, "Ooh, I'm glad he's not at school today," but he hadn't been in school for 40 days. No matter what the misbehaviors that we have seen or that has impacted the class. So, how do we separate the deed from the doer and focus on the attendance goal for who? For all students, including the students who are misbehaving. And I know that's a tough one. It's coming from a person who was at the alternative school. That's tough, but it's the truth. All right, we regularly share attendance data with students and caregivers to help design specific approaches to help them make course correction. And that's, like I said, for like an attendance improvement plan like this, or the one that I shared with you earlier. How are we able to share with them on a regular basis in a visual? Parents and students are very visual. Is there a calendar where we could see, like, all red days that they were really not in school? And that's very powerful. We would have meetings with parents to be able to pull that up. If I have a resource that does that, yes, our resource does that, but making sure that it's visual so they can see what's at hand and they can let us know what they need in order to re-engage or to course correct, and not just what they need, what they can do. Because remember, families have strengths, students have strengths, they can contribute, they have to be a part of this work. They said we have a clear process to identify past persistent barriers that hinder attendance in order to discover essential clues and insights to prevent future absences. Do you have that? Like for your campus, for you to, because the reasons they trend. It could be something. How do we move from working from assumptions to actually knowing what are the top 5 barriers, as to why kids are not coming to school, not coming to your school, or not coming into school in your district? And then we anticipate that educators will always face behaviors that are out of their control. We know that. There are some things that are happening outside of the school walls that yeah. So we consciously react in ways that positively influence a student's trajectory and growth mindset. So team decision making. Evaluate your prioritized and recommended attendance initiative. Remember the initiative that you're going to think through, all right, against the descriptors listed below. It says feel free to change the criteria. Remember, this is just a template. You make it as you wish. And discuss with your team, what are those matrix? Like what does their research and planning look like? The quality of the proposal, the prioritization, the pilot period. Remember, it's always good to get people on your side. Start with the pilot, have some success, and grow from there. The engagement and the feedback, and then of course the data results. This is an all hands on deck. This is not just for you. That's why we're not going to do this. Whoever you have designated as your partner or your collaborator or your team that you are slowly building, or to the team that you already have, make sure that you just take time to look at this. So going on, it says the team assessment, of course, the objectives, and the decision making process, the information sought. Okay, can the information that you get come from a variety of people and sources, not just the PTA people? Don't just look at numbers. I need you to have like a pool of people, student focus groups or something, where you're able to get information. The issues are framed in ways that are encouraged to the exploration of multiple solutions, not just one. This is where the innovation comes in. Everyone at the table has to come up with some sort of solution or a variety of solutions. When you have several kids that are not coming to school, it's not going to take one solution. That's why you have tiered interventions. If the kid, you're not going to do the same thing for a kid that's missing 5 days, that's missing 15, that's missing 15. Minority and descendant viewpoints are considered in this decision. Reliable data and statistics. The leader facilitates open dialogue and don't dictate. what is going on. The leader asks open questions, not just yes or no, because we want to make sure that everyone has the good understanding. The lack of action, when you wonder why people are not doing anything, the lack of action comes from misconceptions, lack of understanding. Like just in Texas, we finally got a definition for chronic absenteeism, right? So not assuming that everyone is coming to the space with the same information. Everyone in the group participates equitably. People are not using all their one or two people are not using all their token tokens. And then team members listen attentively to the viewpoints of others. People are critical thinkers. They are debating, coming, before the agreement, and then of course, what that looks like. This is a really good way to say, hey, this is how we're going to have the hard conversations. We have to have the hard conversations in order to do the hard work. And then of course, this is you use that information to see where you are. As we close, this is what we call an equity walk planning guide. um, I actually beginning to see more and more districts use this as kind of like a problem of practice. It can be very impactful if in your particular district, if they are focused on the equity work. I know right now there are some districts where they are putting a hold on that. So that's why I want to make sure that you see where, if you are in that place in your district and you are ready, this is a really good example, and it walks you through the guidelines of this work. And I cannot help but to invite you once again to our YouTube channel. It is like it's a whole library, y'all. Like what the kids say, it's a whole vibe. Like if you want to hear testimonials, if you want to from actual district partners, not from us, from district partners as to what they're doing to move the needle. I have some 2 minute, 2.5 videos on, attendance review boards, letters, home visits, incentives for students, incentives for parents, incentives for staff members. We just have a lot there. So I hope that you will find that very useful. And I are you looking for money? There are lots of schools and districts that this is that time of year where they're like, we, Sharon, you talked us through, and I have these attendance incentives, but my district keep telling me we don't have any money. These are some of our district partners who, and these are very conservative numbers, especially with Aldine and different districts like that. They're finding millions of dollars using our attendance intervention management platform. So if you would love to learn more about that, please, please, please do me a favor and scan this QR code and just, let's have a conversation. Let's schedule, a demo just so you can learn more, so that you can get more out of it, more students coming to school, more instructional minutes, more money for your district to, number one, help fund your attendance initiatives, but also those competing priorities. So next Tuesday, yes, we talked about priorities, but now we got to share our roadmap. That's a whole nother thing. So participants will leave with a clear strategy for crafting a compelling attendance message that resonates with families, staff, community partners. They would gain tools and launch campaigns that will inspire action, because you can't do it by yourself. Okay, so let's get the families, let's get the communities, let's get the businesses involved, and rather than just sharing information, yeah, what are they going to do with that information? Build that momentum so we true collaboration, and the whole school community can help you with this work. Thank you so very much for your time.